You think you know what DEI is, but you got it all wrong. And in this video, I'm going to tell you what it is and what it's not. Because what if I told you that actually the healthiest and the strongest systems in the world, whether it's in nature or in business, are actually the most diverse? And yet in today's world, today's society, diversity, equity, inclusion, also known as DEI, is being challenged and dismantled in so many companies, like right now as we speak. And so I'm gonna break down the myth of the people who are against DEI because they say that hiring should be based on merit. But if hiring has always been based on merit, then why are women and people of color still underrepresented in things like executive roles? And so we're gonna break it all down. We're gonna talk about what DEI really is, what it's really not, and why it's not just about race, y'all, but it's about all of us. It's about all of us. And we can actually see this in how diversity matters in nature. Would you believe that diversity is not just about humans? Like when you think about the natural principles, when you look at ecosystems, like let's say for example, like the rainforest. The rainforest has a lot of different species and things. So we got trees, it got plants, insects, it got animals, there's fungi all over the rainforest. There's so many different species that all play a role in keeping that ecosystem healthy and thriving. But what happens when one of those species are removed from that system? When one species is removed from that system, the entire system suffers as a result. I want you to imagine a forest that just has like one type of tree that's growing there. If there's one type of tree that's growing in that forest, that's what you call a monoculture. And at first it may sound simple to think, oh, we just got one set of trees, one species, and nothing else, right? And you may be thinking, well, we ain't got nothing else to worry about. Like, we ain't got all these other things to worry about. But the thing is, you're dealing with one thing. You're dealing with that one tree, and that's it. And that's actually a big problem. Why? Because monocultures, they struggle to survive because they lack resilience. And so when you think about, so say for instance, that tree is in that forest and a disease were to strike that tree, it's going to wipe out that entire forest because there's nothing that's there to protect it. There's no other species or anything there to adapt. There's nothing to keep that ecosystem growing and keeping it strong. And so this is why diversity creates resilience. In a diverse ecosystem, on the other hand, it's a totally different story because in a forest where there are thousands of species, thousands of trees, thousands of animals, thousands of insects, if one species were to face something like disease or something disastrous happen to that one species, then everything else can adapt and the system will keep going. And so that is what diversity does. Diversity creates strength. Diversity ensures survival. Diversity is about all of the things working together cohesively, right? And it's not just about diversity either. It's also about nature has some built-in equity systems in it. Would you believe that? Nature thrives on equity because nature distributes resources across everything. So when you think about plants, think about how plants grow in a forest. Some need sunlight, some need like shade to thrive. And if a species was to take over all the space in the sunlight, then what would happen? The other ones would die out and the entire ecosystem would collapse. And so that's why nature distributes its resources, because it knows the importance of cohesiveness. And so that, everything gets what it deserves and what it needs to thrive. And so some plants will get shade, some plants gonna get sunlight, some gonna grow tall, some gonna be small. But it's gonna allow them to all contribute in their own way to that whole entire ecosystem. And so when you think about society, equity in society works the same way. And this is exactly how equity should work in our society, because equity isn't about, giving every species the same thing. It's about making sure that each species in that forest has what it needs to survive and succeed. And then when you remove equity, what happens? That whole entire ecosystem is weakened. It's no longer strong because they're stronger together. And so when you think about the Irish potato, thinking back to the Irish potato famine, What happened when that famine came about was that the farmers, they planted only one type of potato. So there was no diversity, there was no variety. It was just the same crop that was planted pretty much everywhere. And so when disease and disaster struck that potato and those crops, it absolutely wiped out everything. And because of that, an entire nation suffered because there was no resilience. There was no built-in system to help, you know, the crops recuperate, right? So now when you think about that, think about a natural forest that's full of diversity, full of balance, full of resilience. That's why it's able to exist. And so in a full manner, I should say. And so diversity basically strengthens ecosystems. Equity ensures survival, and inclusion keeps everything working together. And so if this is how DEI works in nature, then why do we believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion aren't essential for our own survival? In our businesses, in our schools, our churches, our communities, like, why would we not think it's essential for us? Because if all of our communities and all of our, you know, if we were to remove diversity completely, which is what, you know, is trying to happen now, like, what's really happening is that we're eliminating different perspectives, different experiences, different opportunities. When we do that, we're actually setting ourselves up for failure, y'all. Because just like nature, when we lose diversity, we lose our resilience. And right now, DEI is being dismantled everywhere. Like everywhere you look, it's in the news headlines, and it's just everywhere. Everywhere you turn, everywhere you look, you know. But before I fully get into that even more, I want to break down what does diversity, equity, and inclusion really mean, because a lot of people are out here thinking that they know what DEI is, but guess what? They got it all wrong. They got it all wrong. And so these are the three words that are, I think, the most misunderstood right now. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Three simple words, but my God, the most misunderstood words when they're put together. And it's so crazy how people, you know, they take things that they don't understand and then they run with them, and you know, they don't really understand the true nuances behind them. And so that's why I want to break it down for you. And that's why I'm creating this video. Hopefully you can expand your mind and see things from a different viewpoint. And so diversity basically means bringing people together from all different backgrounds, all different experiences, all different skill sets, different perspectives. Diversity is not just about race, y'all. It's not about race. It's not about black or white, Caucasian, African American. Diversity includes people of all ages, people of all genders, all abilities, variety of educational backgrounds. And so even thought diversity is a thing. This is when people think differently based on, you know, our own experiences and our upbringing. Thought diversity is so key because it means that we all approach problems differently because we come from different environments, and that's actually a good thing. That's a good thing. And when it comes to equity, I think this is the most misunderstood one, because for some reason people think that equity means being unfair or giving opportunities to people simply because they fit within a certain category. And actually, it's the opposite. Equity is all about fairness. It's not about giving everybody the same thing. It is about making sure that everybody has what they need to succeed. And so when I think about the example of equity, think about two people about to race, and they're at the starting line. And one person has a 50-pound book bag on, and the other person don't have a backpack. Who has the advantage in that race? So, like, who's gonna win that race? Obviously the person without the extra weight, okay, without the backpack. Equity is about either removing the weight or making sure that both of those people have the same fair shot so that nobody gets an unfair head start. Equity is not about handing things to people. It's about removing barriers that have historically held people back. That's what equity is. Inclusion is simple. Inclusion just means that, you know, making sure that everybody, no matter their background, no matter their socioeconomic status, their race, no matter what, they have a seat at the table. It's about making sure that opportunities are accessible to everybody so that nobody is left out because of circumstances beyond their control. So I want to talk about the meritocracy myth, because first of all, what even is that? First of all, what is meritocracy? Meritocracy is the idea that success and opportunities are distributed based solely on merit. So based on a person's skills, on their abilities, on their intelligence, on the effort that they make, rather than focusing on things like their race, their gender, their class, their social background. And so if we were to look at an example of true meritocracy, the best person for the job when it comes to hiring is basically the one who always gets hired and promoted. That's if we're following it like for what it is, you know? So basically based on purely qualifications and performance, that's what it is. But in reality, it don't always work that way. So say you have like two people who are going to apply for a job, right? And, you know, the one who has the most experience, the strongest qualification, the best interview performance, that is the person who is going to get hired, irregardless of their background, like whatever connections they may have to so-and-so, you know, like biases, all of those things don't matter. That's what true meritocracy is. Like they're getting the job based on their merit. However, in reality, true meritocracy rarely ever exists. And you know why it rarely ever exists? It's because we have biases. There are biases in our system. We have systemic barriers. We have, you know, unequal access to opportunities. And all of these things influence things like hiring and promotions and career advancements. And so if meritocracy was truly real, if it was something that was implemented, you know, to begin with, like it should be, then we wouldn't be currently seeing all of these disparities that we're seeing today. If hiring and promotions were truly based on merit, then there would not be women who are still making less money than men for the exact same job. There would not be people of color being underrepresented in executive positions. There would not be disabled individuals struggling to access career opportunities. And so it brings me back to DEI. So now when you think about DEI, what is it? Because it's not just, you know, there to create a more fair meritocracy. DEI does not replace merit. It actually ensures that merit is actually recognized and implemented. So what does DEI do again? DEI helps to remove biases so that even qualified people aren't overlooked due to their race, to their gender, to their background. DEI helps to expand access to opportunities, mentorships, professional development for people, again, who have been historically left out. This didn't just come out the middle of nowhere. It came because it was a need. And so, again, true meritocracy can only exist when everybody starts with a fair shot at success. You have to start there first. And so that's why DEI matters, y'all. That is why it matters. And you know what? Something else that I find so interesting, because, you know, I always look at the data and link it back to the data. And there was a study done in 2003 by Bertrand and Mulianathan, if I didn't butcher his name. But they sent out these identical resumes with names that were perceived as either like white sounding names or black sounding names. So like think Emily and Greg or Lakeisha and Jamal, okay? Is that bias? I don't know, whatever. Anyway, but the findings from the study revealed that the resume with the white sounding names received 50% more callbacks than those with the black sounding names. Get this, despite having identical qualifications. So is that merit? I don't know. You tell me, is that merit, you know? And then to go further, when you think about gender disparities in leaderships, like despite women earning the majority of college degrees, women hold less than 10% of CEO positions in FTSE 100 companies. And so this disparity alone highlights that there are still ongoing challenges that qualified women face and extend into, you know, the type of leadership roles. And so, you know, like if we're still experiencing barriers to opportunity, that means that merit alone is not enough. Like there are still like so many candidates from underrepresented backgrounds who haven't had access to the same things, the same resources, the same networks. Like, I don't understand how that concept is so hard to grasp. But this is why things like DEI exist, because when you think about it, like, okay, so for example, let's say, you're applying for a job, and the hiring manager, you're applying for a job, you went to a state school, and another candidate went to an Ivy League school, and y'all are equally qualified. So who are they gonna go with? There's many biases that Ivy League schools are better than like state schools, HBCUs, community colleges. And so many of those people from those schools are never given the same opportunities because there was a bias that prestigious school or that Ivy League was better. And that's the part I don't understand, because like when I think about my own personal experience, I went to Mississippi State University, Hell State, okay? I went there for undergraduate, and I would like to think that, I turned out to be a fine individual. Like I'm a founder today. I'm a CEO of my own company, and me attending a state school had nothing to do with my qualifications being less. But on paper, compared to somebody else, it would be judged in that way. So what that tells me is that unconscious bias exists in hiring in so many different ways. Like most of those people in leadership positions, they're hiring people who look like them, people who sound like them, people who come from similar backgrounds as them, as those who already model and look like those people in leadership, which many times doesn't model a diverse community. And so if leadership is majority looking like one race or one gender, and you're hiring based off of that, then how is that fair to anybody else? How is that giving somebody else a fair chance? And how is that based off of merit when there are unconscious biases that goes on, right? And so you're closing the loop and keeping it that way. And so that's why these boards all look the same. And so what DEI does is it expands the talent pool. It does not lower standards, y'all. DEI does not lower standards. It expands the talent pool, and it makes it so that everybody can have a fair and equal chance, okay? DEI is not about giving jobs to unqualified people who miss the market, who are not qualified. And first of all, I don't even know where y'all heard that from, because let me say it again. DEI is not about giving jobs to unqualified people. It's about making sure that qualified people have a fair seat and chance at the table, and that they're not ignored. And so if DEI didn't matter, we would not have all these disparities that we're trying to currently correct. If hiring always had been based on merit, then we would already have a diverse set of people in executive roles and in roles that matter. And so the fact that DEI is even needed proves that bias and not just talent has shaped hiring and promotion decisions. And this is why DEI matters. I want to share a story that happened not too long ago that I've experienced with diversity in my own life. So last week we were at a restaurant, and my 5-year-old son, he saw somebody with a hijab on. And so he didn't know what that was. And so he asked, he said, why is that covering their face? Like, what's that on their face, right? He was curious. He didn't know. And so he was wondering. And so he asked the question. And so my husband basically started telling him, people have different beliefs. They have different ways they dress, different religious beliefs, different, basically different cultures. And so that's, he was explaining it to him. And so he was saying that we should always treat people the same regardless, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And so my son, he didn't think nothing about it. He just got a lesson right there, But that's why diversity is important, because you may sometimes see people or experience people who don't look like you, who don't act like you, who haven't experienced the same culture as you. And you may label them as weird or different when they're human just like you. They just were raised and came up in a different environment. And so that's what diversity is, being in an environment where you are able to welcome and accept everybody. I'm from Mississippi. I was born and raised in Mississippi. Mississippi is mostly white and black. That's pretty much what I saw growing up. When I went off to Texas for graduate school, that's when I was introduced to what, some call it the melting pot. I saw people of all different ethnicities, races, ethnic backgrounds, religions, like all the type of things. And so that was my first time really experiencing that up close and personal. And so that's why diversity is so important, because I was able to just experience the world in a whole new way. But what if I was narrow-minded and said, okay, these people, they look different than me, they act different than me, they talk different than me, so I'm going to isolate myself. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm going to, think they're inferior than me. Like, where would that have gotten me? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is why diversity matters, y'all. Because we're put on this earth to love one another and to help one another. And so there is no benefit in ostracizing one group of people and elevating another group of people. Because why? Why? We all belong in this same space. Again, none of us are more superior than another. It doesn't matter if, we have different religious beliefs. It doesn't matter if we went to different schools. It doesn't matter if we grew up in different parts of the world. It doesn't matter if you go to church, this church, and I go to that church. Like, none of that matters, y'all, because at the end of the day, we should all be able to coexist. We should all be able to respect one another, and we should all be able to love one another like the love of Christ. And so I just thought that was a perfect example using my son in that moment, as a teaching lesson, because again, it's not about being inferior or superior. We're all different, yet we're all the same, right? And just because we're different, we shouldn't be treated differently because we're different. And so again, I want to emphasize that DEI is not just, it's not about race. It's not about race. DEI benefits every single person in this world. It's about fairness for everybody. So who benefits from DEI? All of us. Let's start with people with disabilities. When you think about, like, say for instance, like, if you haven't paid attention, the next time you go to the hotel, pay attention to this. Like, they have rooms that are equipped for disabled individuals. And so they may be built with like ramps, lower toilet seats, and you may be complaining because it's too low or that the shower's too low or, something is off or things like that because you don't realize the benefits of what you consider to be normalcy, but somebody else normal is different. And so they make hotels in this space to be able to accommodate people who need wheelchairs or who need extra help, right? That's DEI. That's being inclusive of people with disabilities. When you think about education, special needs kids with learning disabilities, all those type of things, that's a part of DEI. Kids who may need some type of IEP plan, What are we taking away from those kids when we dismantle DEI, and that's a part of it? Like, me personally, we have a child on IEP, Again, that's part of DEI. And then we think about women in these male-dominated industries. Like, women are breaking barriers. They're doing some great things, right? We're doing some great things, and we're breaking barriers everywhere in STEM, corporate leadership, all these things. DEI gives us the opportunity to take our rightful places at the throne, at the head of the table, right? In a male-dominated world. And I know you've heard of, all the stories of the women who have been overlooked simply because they're a woman. And even though they're just as talented and just as experienced, they get passed over still. And so DEI is in place to ensure that they have a fair and equal opportunity at those same positions. That's what it is. DEI is about fairness for all, y'all. I don't know how many times I gotta say it. And so we don't gotta agree on everything, y'all. But to believe that every human being deserves respect, dignity, and opportunity, like, that should absolutely be the bare minimum. That should be the bare minimum belief. We live in a world where people have so many different, just beliefs, backgrounds, or whatever, but at the end of the day, what matters the most? What matters the most is how we treat one another, how we show up for one another, how we be in community for one another. God calls us to love our neighbors. Like, at the end of the day, he calls us to love. The greatest of all these things is love. And so that means creating spaces where people feel seen, where they feel heard, where they feel validated, where they feel included. That's what love does. That's what creating these spaces do. And so when we're really talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're really talking about making sure that everybody, regardless of whatever, have the ability, to work in life, to live in this life, and in this world, to thrive, without facing any type of discrimination and things like that. When it comes to fairness, like, this should not be a controversial topic, So whether it's gender, ability, race, income level, or any of the other factors that plays a role in it, fairness should never be controversial. Like, because at the core of what we're talking about, this is a human issue, y'all. Like, this is not a political one, even though it's sometimes framed that way. This is humanity at its finest, okay? And so this is why it's so important to just really understand the impact and the effects of DEI, because it affects all of us. And think about schools in like lower income districts. They may not have all the access into the resources like some schools may have in the more structured districts. For example, I grew up in Jackson Public School District, Jim Hill High School, okay, go Tigers. And JPS wasn't a horrible district, but if I'm being honest, JPS did not have the exact same resources as something like a suburban school like Madison Central High School. And so sometimes I think that, you know, if I would have had access to those things early on, like where would I be now? Like the skill levels that I've experienced, my career, like all those things, like that exposure, where could I have been now, right? And so that's what equity does. It says, okay, if we're handing out these government fundings to these schools, then we're going to give $100,000 to Madison Central, and we're going to give $100,000 to Jim Hill so that the level field is equal, leaving no child behind. That's what no child left behind should really mean, right? So why would we not want this? Like, that's what DEI is, y'all. It is about making the world better. It's for everybody. It's not just for one group. It is not just for one group. It is for every single body. Why would we not want that? Like, why would we not want that? That's the part that I don't understand. That's the part I'm curious about. I want to ask you the question, like, why would we not want to make the world a better place for everybody and not just one group? If you have the answer to that, comment below and let me know, because I really would like to know your perspective on that answer. Because right now we're seeing DEI being challenged, dismantled, you know, we're seeing diversity efforts being rolled back everywhere. And it seems like every big company you can think of is rolling back their diversity initiatives. And you have to ask the question, why though? Why? Like, what is the reason? Because when you remove diversity, you're actually weakening the entire system. You're weakening a whole system, whether it's in education and business. When we remove diversity, we're weakening and dismantling our entire community, and we make everything fall apart. It may not happen initially, but over time. And so let's use the example of a Fortune 500 company. There's one person who is the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, and they're coming up with all the ideas, like what they think is gonna happen. They're forecasting, they're predicting, and all this. And if there's 15 people in the room, and only one person is contributing to the creative process, what's gonna happen to that business? It's gonna suffer. And you know why? Because one person does not represent the whole world. And this is why companies themselves need diverse voices, especially if they have a product or a service that is selling to the masses, because you need diverse voices and people at the table. If you are a shoe company, for example, let's say you sell shoes, and let's say an Asian person is the lead marketer and making all the creative decisions, what happened to the Black consumers? Like, what happened to the white consumers, the Indian consumers? A Black person knows how to culturally speak to Black people, right? And they're able to create a campaign that resonates with them. The same way an Indian person can, you know, be at the table and speak to their culture in the same way that others cannot. Like, if you don't have diverse voices at the table, then creativity is gonna suffer, growth is gonna suffer, and most important, what does companies care about? Profits. Profits are going to suffer. And so I just really never understood how a company can serve people of all races and all around the world, but then they show up and have a board full of 50 white men. Like, that's hard to process, because I'm thinking, like, where's the intentionality behind that? Like, even if that's not their intention, it sends a message to people who are their consumers that they're not represented. And people notice when they're not being included. And when people are not being included, that affects brand loyalty and that affects the business success. And so that's why diversity matters. Everybody deserves to see themselves in whatever is being offered, you know? What happens when there's a society where only one voice is amplified? A country where only one voice is amplified, that justice suffers. When one voice is heard and others are silenced, there is no balance. There is no accountability. There is no fairness. Like, when we reject diversity, we are rejecting ultimately the fullness of what God intended. Rejecting diversity is like saying, God, you made a mistake. Like, it's like telling him, You created all of us in your image. I know, but some of these people don't belong. So you made a mistake. Something, I don't know what you did, because these people don't belong at the table with us. And so when we reject diversity, we are rejecting God's vision for us, his unity, togetherness. We're rejecting it all. So the question becomes, what can we do? What can I do? What can you do? Like, how do we make sure that diversity isn't just something that we talk about, but something that we live, something that we see through, right? Number one, we got to see diversity as a strength. The more perspectives we include, the better solutions we're going to naturally create. Everybody belongs at the table without excluding anybody. And so by seeing people, by hearing them, by validating their voices, we create stronger communities, stronger businesses. And then we gotta love like Jesus, y'all. It ain't hard. We gotta love like Jesus. Like, I know sometimes it may seem hard because people in themselves be peopling, okay? But even Jesus embraced diversity. He welcomed the outcasts. He crossed culture barriers. He even uplifted the marginalized. And so if we stop looking at the world through the lens of superiority, then we actually help to make this place a better place. A soft answer turns away anger. Love cures all. The greatest of these is love. When you reach out and say, I got you, I see you, I feel you, I feel your pain, I hear you, I'm in this fight with you, it changes the atmosphere. It changes the atmosphere. Speak up for fairness. Advocate for inclusion in your workplace, in your schools, in your communities. Like, speak up when you see unfair treatment or injustice. One cause that's near and dear to my heart personally is the Crown Act and the fight against texturism. So texturism is when certain hair types are deemed inappropriate or unprofessional compared to others, when you think about kinky, coily type of textures or even locks and braids. And so everybody deserves to be seen and not judged for the way they wear their hair, okay? And so if I show up with an afro, that shouldn't make people question my intelligence or ability as a CEO. And that's why DEI and inclusion are important, because we need policies that make the world fair for everybody, that includes everybody. And everyday advocacy actually matters. Advocacy happens in the small moments. And so if you're listening to this video, if you have ears to hear and a voice to speak, then there is something that you can absolutely advocate for. And it doesn't even have to be this huge movement. Like, even small actions make a huge difference. So one example would be, let's say that you're at a store, you're at a gas station, you're at a store somewhere, right? And so if you're a white person and then a black person is standing in the line before you, but then the cashier looks up and calls you up first, ignoring that black person, then you have the power to say something as simple like, no, they were here first and they deserve to go before me. That's advocacy, y'all. It don't have to be huge. Like, sometimes I think we overthink it. That's advocacy, that's fairness, that's inclusion in action in that moment. And so even those small moments, those small little actions, they matter. They may seem small, but they're so big. And so why would we not want DEI altogether? DEI makes the world better for everybody, not just one group. And so I'm still lost at the confusion and why would we not want that? So y'all, again, I'm not like a political person. I usually don't get involved in these topics, but I've come to realize that, again, human issues, things that affect other people and that oppress other people, I can't sit back and not say anything. And so I wanted to make this video to show the differences and to try to bring light to it in a simple terms. I hope it was simple for you to understand. I hope it gave you something to think about. Y'all, we are all made in God's image. None of us is more better than the other. We should all be helping one another. We should all be elevating one another. What's printed on our money? In God we trust. In God we trust. And so if we're all made in his image and we trust in him, then why aren't we treating each other like we're all sisters and brothers, irregardless of what looks different on the surface as far as skin color? We have the same blood running through our veins. We go to the bathroom the same. We all got mouths. How do we gain weight, lose weight, or just feel good? We eat. We all eat. And so we really have to be serious and intentional about just being a voice, a beacon of hope, a beacon of light, and advocating for the people in our communities, our neighbors, people who don't look like us, I think that's how you bring a community and a society together when there's so much divisiveness and so much hate that's trying to come in between people, right? It shouldn't be about Democrat versus Republican. It shouldn't be about Christian versus Baptist, or within the Christian community that goes, or a Christian against Buddhism or something, or Ivy League versus state school, or the wealthy versus the poor. The enemy comes to try to steal, kill, and destroy. He tries to be divisive, to get us to get off our game, to stop thinking about what really matters, so that we can be each other's throats and be at each other's necks. That is not how God intended for us to live. He intended for us to live a peaceful life, a life where we're not, so consumed about trying to push somebody else down. We're not consumed about being crabs in a bucket. He wants us to live a life of abundance where we're not worried about scarcity. And that's another thing. All of this stuff is coming from a scarcity mindset. Because what other mindset could that originate from? If you have a scarcity mindset, that means you're operating from, okay, I have to push this person down in order to elevate myself up. Or, if I eliminate them, then there's more for me. That's not how God works. God works, the story of the 5,000. They came, they were hungry, they was looking for food. They didn't have enough resources. What did God do? He said, what? Break the bread. Told the disciples to go produce food, right? They didn't have no food they could produce. But anyway, long story short, God came up with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, and he broke it and he made it enough. You know how your mom, you go to the store or something, and kids, they be wanting something to eat and they only get a little bit. Make it enough. Make it enough, okay? God can make it enough. He is just that abundant, and he can provide. He can take little resources and make them infinite, make them abundant, so that everybody has and they don't miss out. And so I just want to implore you and encourage you, if you don't have an abundant mindset, know that abundance is your birthright. All you have to do is believe and start seeing opportunities as if you're not missing out on anything. Because trust me and believe, you're not missing out on anything. You're not missing out on anything. And also, you reap what you sow. What you put out into the world, what you get out there, it comes back to you. So when you sow kindness, you're gonna get kindness. When you sow love, you're gonna get love. When you look out for people, they're gonna look out for you. That's just the natural law. Sow and reap. That's a basic principle. And so do it to others as you want to have them do it to you. But first of all, you need to know how to treat yourself first. You need to know your worth, what you stand for, so that when you're treating other people that way, you can treat them with that same level of worth and love that you give yourself, y'all. I just really, want us to just really stop and think about the things that matters. Life is not promised to any of us. Man, we can be here right now, today, and drop dead tonight and be gone tomorrow. When you look at the grand scheme of things like that, it makes you think, what really matters? Like, do we really want to leave this world with hate in our heart, to where, we are just being so mean and evil towards other people? Like, what do we gain from that? Like, that has to make our souls so miserable, right? Like, you don't have to live a bitter life. You don't have to have a soul that feels miserable. You can have a soul that is full of joy, irregardless of even what you have. Even if you have small resources, you can be happy. You can live a joyful life. That's why many times you hear about people who may have all the wealth in the world, all the money in the world. They have all the resources, and yet they're unhappy. They're unhappy and miserable individuals, because all of that stuff don't matter. At the end of the day, it's about the little things that matter. How you show up and how you treat people. Ultimately, that's what's going to make you feel the best, right? When you walk down the street and give somebody a compliment and see them smile, you know what? I encourage you to, I challenge you to do that. I challenge you to do that. When you go out today, be intentional about finding somebody who don't look like you, somebody who may look differently than you, somebody who may dress differently than you, somebody who, obviously there's some difference. Go out of your way. Start a conversation with them. Give them a compliment. Whatever. You will be so amazed, number one, at what it does for them, but also more important, what it does for you, how you're going to feel. Even when you're having a bad day, that one gesture can uplift your spirits and have you on cloud 9, right? So I just want to encourage you to do that, y'all. We are so much better together. We are so much better together. And all of this hate that's being contrived and spewed and trying to get people up in all up in arms, you don't have to co-sign it, or you don't have to sign up for that. You have a choice to say, not on my watch. This is not how I choose to live life, right? You have that choice. You have that power. All you have to do is step into it and say, this is how me and mine are going to run, you know? Again, and it starts with your kids too. Treat your kids to be loving. Treat your kids to be kind to people who don't look like them, or who, you know, may dress differently. You know, if your child is well off and there's some kids who may come to school with holes in their pants or their shoes or whatever, teach your child to be loving and kind and to speak life into those kids. Because one thing I know about life with anything, it can be somebody else today and it can be you tomorrow. And so you should always be mindful in how you speak about people, how you treat people, you know, be more intentional in loving on people, you know, because you never know when it's going to be you that needs the helping hand. You never know when whatever life situation is going to turn on your street. You never know. And that's irrespective. That's apply to anybody. If you are a human, irregardless of whatever, you never know what hand life can deal with you at any given time. And so just knowing that alone, that should be enough to make you want to be a decent and a good human, and to just pour into others and to love on others, because what you pour out, it comes back to you, y'all. So I got completely off script, but I just felt led to say that. And I pray that this video has touched some part of your heart. Again, if you know me, or if you can tell, I'm not someone who likes to stir up strife and trouble. You know, most times I like to try to be neutral. I like to bring positivity, encouragement, and to bring different angles for people to enlighten them. And so this whole video wasn't to get people to debate with me, or to, you know, who think differently than me, to try to attack me or anything. It's nothing like that. So whatever comments you have, please leave them in the comments. I love diverse perspectives. I love having dialogue and opening my mind to different things. Maybe there's some angles that I missed out. Maybe there's some angles that I didn't see, you know. But the entire premise of this video, I want to say, I always hear people say that they're dismantling DEI because people should be hired based on merit. But what people are missing is that DEI was created because people weren't being hired on merit. Merit was lacking, right? And that is why that whole DEI exists, so that people who are a diverse background, so they could have equal opportunity and equity to sit at the tables that they so rightfully deserve to be, you know, set at. So I just want to, if you're somebody who thought that, just try to see it from that perspective and say, okay, maybe she's right. Maybe let me look at the stats and see what it says. If people were submitting resumes and 50% less Black people were being called in and having the same qualifications, then maybe that's why DEI came in place to begin with. You know, I just implore you to think about it a little bit more. Anyway, I love y'all so much. I hope you are having an amazing day. Go forth, be great, do great things. God is going to cover you. He's going to protect you. And no matter if you're going through the toughest season of your life right now, He's still going to make a way out of no way for you. I believe that. And, you know, it's not over until He says it's over. At the end of the day, God always has the last say. So keep going, keep pushing, keep your head up, and keep the faith.